Hello, I am Elijah Armstrong, and this is one of our Heumann-Armstrong Award videos. For those of you who don't know, the Heumann-Armstrong Award is a scholarship for students with disabilities in the 6th grade and up, including all forms of higher education, who've experienced and fought against ableism in education. Each one of our winners receives a $1,000 award, and we also shoot a video with them, giving them a chance to tell their stories. And this is one of those videos. So I am really happy to introduce you to 2023-2024 Heumann-Armstrong Award winner, R.J. Justice.
On screen now are the logos for all four organizations: the American Association of People with Disabilities, the Quello Center, Equal Opportunities for Students, and Esquire Bank. On screen now is the logo of the Heumann-Armstrong Award and white text on a gray background that reads Present 2023-2024 Heumann-Armstrong Award winner R.J. Justice, illustrated by Access Gallery.
My name is RJ Justice. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. And for an image description, there is a non-binary white person on the screen wearing a cream t-shirt with brown hair, and there is a cement wall in the background.
A headshot of RJ. RJ Justice, a young white person, stands outside with their hands on their hips. They are wearing a burgundy shirt and blue jeans and are smiling at the camera.
I am from Colorado. I never moved. I'm still living here.
An illustration of RJ in the same position.
And I go to the University of Denver, and I'm a second year there.
The University of Denver.
So I am autistic. That is my disability. For people who aren't familiar, autism is a developmental disability. It's also considered a type of neurodivergence. And some of the main things I think that kind of fall under the autism umbrella is sensory sensitivities, communication differences. Many autistic people also have really focused, maybe some people would say obsessive interests. Yeah, I would say those are kind of the main things, at least the main things for me. As far as how it affects me in general, I would say probably social communication differences impact me a lot on the day-to-day, and same with sensory sensitivities. There are kind of some comorbid things that go along with autism frequently, like misophonia, which is just the extreme sensitivity to sound, and certain sounds make me really irrationally angry or upset.
RJ reacting harshly to sound.
Lots of crying and breakdowns because of sensory overwhelm. So those are kind of some of the things that impact me on a regular basis. I would say also, I mentioned social differences. Find it really hard to make small talk and meeting new people for the first time, and I often miss social cues, when people start talking to me in a group, but I think they're still talking to somebody else, or sarcasm, those types of things.
RJ struggling to make small talk.
As far as how it affects me in school, to be honest, in terms of academics, it does not have a huge impact on me directly. I would say things that happen outside of the classroom have a much bigger effect on me. Again, a huge part of college is the social scene, and I struggle with that, so that has a big effect on me. And then oftentimes I find myself trying really hard to keep up with everyone else, especially when it comes to social things, going to events, going to professional development things. and everyone else is kind of like rolling with that. And for me, it takes a lot more energy. And so I often am like running, trying to keep up. And then I just get really exhausted and burnt out. And that can kind of have an effect on how much schoolwork is getting done and if I'm showing up to classes and that kind of stuff.
RJ lost at a college club fair.
I love school. I have always liked school a lot. My major is international studies, and then I have minors in leadership and French. And I actually have enjoyed my writing classes more than than any of those classes. So our core curriculum is like writing classes as part of it, and I enjoyed those more than my actual major classes, mostly because of my professor, who I'll probably talk about a bit later, but she was the one who introduced me to disability justice, and so I really enjoyed those classes. Outside of class, I love to write. I have a service dog in training, so I spend a lot of time with my puppy and doing dog training.
RJ and their service dog.
I also love to play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. And I'm also part of the Colorado Women's College leadership program at my school. So it's in my class, I think there's about 20-ish women and women of color, and that kind of makes up our leadership program. And we focus on community service and partnering with community organizations in our area to kind of help groups of people in the Denver metro area. What else do I do? I'm also part of the neurodiversity resource group. I'm the social media chair for that club. And I love going to those events outside of classes as well. I honestly am pretty involved outside of academics. I try to go to as many things as possible. So that often means that I'm very busy and very tired most of the time, but I do enjoy it. My friends are mostly all disabled and or neurodivergent. I met most of them through neurodiversity and disability focused programs. And now I just kind of hang out with those people, mostly because they're the people I feel most comfortable with, and we kind of have a lot of shared experiences, so that helps for connection. But yeah, I'd say that's kind of my overall school experience right now. As far as ableism in school, I think a lot about the structural barriers and systemic barriers, usually with people kind of outside of myself, because given that I have a disability, I'm fairly well suited to school and traditional ways of school. And that was just kind of coincidentally how my brain works. But there are definitely systemic barriers that I think about a lot. A lot of professors have required attendance. Your grade gets dropped if you do not show up to class. There are issues with exams, and recently I've been having lots of conversations with admin and professors because professors are complaining about how many accommodation requests they get every quarter. So that's, yes. I think there are always systemic barriers in place. That's how many institutions were built, and things have kind of just carried on in that way. I think that I don't experience much ableism from other kids, I will say. Most of the students that I interact with and know, I don't really experience much ableism. Often I'm met with a sort of genuine curiosity about my experiences. Not always true for professors. Sometimes yes, but a lot of times I find professors who ask me insensitive questions and say things like, oh, like if I come to them with a request about my disability or accommodations, I get responses like, oh, well, everyone's a little bit autistic. And yes, well, I deal with that too. So it's really not that big of a deal, which can be pretty discouraging and invalidating to hear from your professors.
A professor discouraging RJ.
That I have in school include a single room. I have time and a half on tests. I'm allowed to take tests in a distraction-reduced setting, and then I am currently filling out the paperwork for my service dog in training. I would say, and this kind of goes back to structural barriers. I don't actually use a lot of my accommodations. I have a single room, which is immensely helpful, probably like the most important accommodation to me. But I don't really use any of my other ones, mostly because, for example, with time and a half on tests, you are required to leave the room and do it in a different place, which is fine, except for often all the other students are taking the test in the classroom, and that's where the professor gives hints and tips on the test. And often we have 2-hour classes, and often the test will take an hour, and then the professor will continue lecturing for the rest of that class. And so in those cases, if you are out of the classroom still taking your test, then you're missing lessons. And that's another structural barrier. So I don't use my testing accommodations.
RJ outside the classroom missing a lecture.
Of course, it feels isolating, and like it almost feels like you're being put in timeout a little bit because you have to leave the room and be somewhere else, and you don't take the test with the rest of your class. And I think that in a way that would like accommodate everyone, I personally do not see the why exams couldn't just have extended time like in the classroom. And for people who need a distraction reduced setting, maybe there's a way to make the classroom distraction reduced. I mean, I'm thinking like, let's turn off noises like a fan in the background, or let's dim the lights. And I think that giving people the choice of whether or not they want to leave the room is also a good idea. I mean, like for me personally, I wouldn't probably need to leave the room, but having extended time is helpful. For people who are like, yeah, this space is not working for me, it would be nice for them to have the choice to be like, I am going to leave the room and go to a different space to take the test. Probably the only one I use is my single room accommodation. And that is immensely helpful to me. It gives me space to decompress and have a safe, like sensory place to relax and recharge.
RJ living alone.
So that's great. That helps in and out of the classroom, because how much energy I have and how well I'm doing has an effect on everything else in my life. As far as the accommodation process, this is another structural barrier. It's not very easy. You have to fill out a form through our student disability services. You are then requested to do an interview with an accommodation specialist, basically on why you need that accommodation. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes and they're like, yes, okay. And sometimes they just say no. I've had a lot of friends who have tried to get accommodations for months to years and are still trying to get accommodations and have not succeeded.
A long line of students waiting for accommodations.
So it's not the most accessible process. I think a lot of the challenges with that are bureaucratic things. like having to write a whole form about why you need accommodation, and then you have to do a face-to-face interview about why you need that accommodation. And then there's more paperwork to do once you officially receive the accommodation, which, as you can imagine, I mean, for people like me with executive functioning struggles, like I may do the first step of that process and none of the other ones. Or I don't know, there's a multitude of ways that that's not accessible. So in terms of thinking about when I'm not getting accommodated, the good thing is I didn't struggle too much to get my single room accommodation. And that's the one that's most important to me. And that was mostly because my parents helped me through that entire process, as I did all the paperwork before I started going to school here.
RJ filing for accommodations early.
For my other accommodations, like, it has been a struggle, and like I said, I don't use them, so I often am kind of just put in a place where, again, I'm doing my best to keep up with everyone else. Sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't, but I just have to keep carrying on, since I did make the choice to not use my accommodations for, granted, like, barriers that shouldn't exist, but things move slowly, and no matter how much I communicate to people that things aren't working, they often don't get changed immediately. I think that the disability rights movement means a lot to me, more and more and more as time goes on. I was first introduced to, I knew about the disability rights movement, but I was first introduced to disability justice specifically by one of my writing professors who recommended the book Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice by Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasina. And that was eye-opening to me. I was like, wow, this is what the world could be. I mean, just rethinking so many things that we take for granted that aren't working for people.
Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasina.
And I think since reading that, and as more time goes on and I meet more disabled people and kind of learn more about disability history, it just means more to me. And a lot of that has to do with being inspired by other people and also, like, feeling connected to other people. I mean, I spent a lot of my, I guess, like, primary and secondary years just feeling very alone and isolated. And I didn't connect well with other people, and I didn't really have very many friends. And I didn't get diagnosed with my disability until my senior year of high school. And so moving into a world where it feels like I relate to people and we have shared experiences and I can connect to them, is amazing. I mean, yeah, it's a game changer for me.
RJ surrounded by supportive disabled people.
I really look up to disabled peers as well, like people that I go to school with, that I hear their stories every day about what they're going through at school and the things they're struggling with, and they're kind of my biggest heroes. I also am working on a research project right now. I got a grant from the Undergraduate Research Center at my school, and I was encouraged to apply for that by my professor who introduced me to disability justice. And that has been a wild experience from, like, beginning to end. I kind of wrote the proposal not really expecting anything to come of it, and then I got the grant, and I have been researching how we can improve the programs on campus for neurodivergent and disabled students. And that has ended up becoming more broad than I initially expected it to, in terms of where the research will get applied and what will come of it. But that has been a huge learning process. I mean, personally, but also just in terms of how inaccessible research is for disabled people. But I have been loving doing that, and I recently did a presentation on my early findings for the one of the departments at my school during their faculty meeting, and got some good feedback on that. So it's really cool to kind of see an immediate impact, like when you present, like, here's what people have been saying, and these are some ways that we can, change the way we do things at school to make it more accessible to people, and then to have faculty members, professors come up to you and be like, I never thought about it like that. Like, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to implement this in my classroom. That's cool. Especially when you've had experiences where people kind of shut you down.
RJ presenting their research to school faculty.
Sometimes it feels like I'm doing a lot of work without much results. And then sometimes, like, I have these really amazing experiences, like at this faculty meeting where people tell me that I've had an impact, and that's really nice too. I mean, I think it's nice to communicate to people when you've had an impact, because, like, I would never know if somebody didn't tell me. And I think about that, like, in the reverse. Like, I think about people who have had an impact on me all the time, but they have no idea that I've been impacted by them because I don't tell them. So that's something I've been working on as well, like telling people, like, I really appreciated that work that you did. And that matters, because otherwise I think people kind of just don't know. I do the work that I do largely because of, my own experiences. I spent much of my life being very lonely and feeling very isolated, and I was struggling with school, and I was struggling with friends, and I was struggling with mental illness, depression, anxiety, and I didn't really have any support. So I think, like, a lot of why I do what I do is I don't want anyone else to go through that. I don't want anyone who comes after me to have to struggle in the way that I did. So if there's anything that I can do to make it a little easier for the next people, then that's what I want to do. Especially as that relates to education, because up till this point I've spent my entire life in school. And so I'm pretty intimately familiar with what it feels like to be disabled in school, or at least for my specific disability. And it's not easy most of the time. So again, like, if there's something that can change, if there's something that I can change, or even start to change, that will make it better for the future, then that's what I want to be doing. And that's why I do the work that I do.
RJ supporting a younger lonely student.
Thank you, RJ, for sharing your story with us. You can find out more about them in the link in the description, as well as all of the other orgs that came together to allow this award to happen. And you can also see videos from our other Heumann-Armstrong Award winners, both from this year and our previous 2 years. So lead on, everyone.